The conference room in Geneva was quiet as Ambassador Zexthor entered. His feathers shimmered under the lights, changing from blue to deep purple. He represented the Galactic Council, and today he brought news that would change everything for humanity. Around the table sat Earth's leaders. Secretary General Maria Santos folded her hands and waited. Admiral James Chen sat beside her, his face calm. Defense ministers from 12 nations filled the other seats. They had been told this meeting was urgent. Zexthor activated his holographic display. A map of the galaxy appeared, floating above the table. Red dots marked dead worlds. There were 47 of them. Honored humans, Zexthor began, his translator device making his chirps into words. I bring grave news. The Catharn swarm approaches your sector. He touched the display. The image changed to show creatures that looked like giant insects. They had too many legs and eyes that reflected no light. Their ships were organic, grown rather than built. The Catharn consume everything, Zexthor explained. They have destroyed 47 civilizations. Billions of lives gone. They do not negotiate. They do not stop. They only hunger. The ambassador pulled up images of destroyed worlds. Cities melted into slag. Forests turned to ash. Oceans boiled away. Your Earth lies in their path. Our calculations show they will arrive in 6 months. Zexthor's feathers drooped, showing sadness. I am truly sorry. Secretary General Santos leaned forward. What do you propose, Ambassador? Evacuation, Zexthor said quickly. The Galactic Council has approved emergency relocation. We will move your population to protected colony worlds. 3 planets have been prepared. They are safe, far from the swarm's hunting grounds. He showed images of these new worlds, green landscapes, blue skies, empty cities waiting for refugees. We estimate we can evacuate 2 billion humans in 6 months. It will be difficult, but possible. The rest, we paused. We will establish a defensive perimeter around Earth. Our fleet will buy time for more evacuations. We have experience with the Catharn. We know how to delay them. Admiral Chen raised his hand. Delay them? Not stop them? Zexthor's feathers flattened against his head. No species has ever stopped the Catharn, Admiral. We can only slow them, save as many as possible, and retreat. This is the way. How many ships will you commit to Earth's defense? Asked General Reeves from the United States. 12 battle cruisers, 40 destroyers, and 200 support craft, Zexthor said with pride. It is one of the largest fleets we have ever assembled for a rescue operation. The room fell silent. The humans looked at each other. Something passed between them, some unspoken communication. Then Admiral Chen started to chuckle. It was a low sound at first. Secretary General Santos smiled. Then she laughed too. General Reeves grinned and shook his head. Within seconds, the entire human delegation was laughing. Not nervous laughter, but genuine amusement. Zexthor's feathers shot up in alarm. His translator checked itself for errors. Had something been mistranslated? These humans were facing extinction. Why were they laughing? Please, Zexthor said, his voice rising. I do not understand. Do you not comprehend? The Catharn will destroy your world. Every human who remains will die. There is no shame in evacuation. Many species have... Ambassador Zexthor, Admiral Chen interrupted, still smiling. We understand perfectly. That's why we're laughing, but why? The ambassador's confusion was complete. Secretary General Santos stood. She walked to the window and looked out at the city below. Ambassador, has your species ever studied human history in detail? Of course, Zexthor replied. You achieved spaceflight 200 years ago. You joined the galactic community 50 years ago. You are classified as a level 2 civilization, still developing. This is why we must protect you. Level 2, Santos repeated softly. She turned back to face him. What else did your file say? That humans are adaptable, that you reproduce quickly, that your planet has diverse environments. Zexthor consulted his device. There are some restricted files I do not have clearance to access. Those restricted files, Admiral Chen said, tell a different story. Ambassador, do you know how many wars humanity has fought? Wars? Zexthor tilted his head. Your species has been unified for 2 centuries. Before that, Chen continued. Do you know how long humans spent fighting each other? Zexthor checked his database. His eyes widened. This cannot be correct. It says 10,000 years of continuous warfare. That must be an error. No error, General Reeves said. "We've been perfecting the art of war since we lived in caves. We fought with sticks, then swords, then guns, then nuclear weapons. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times." "Then you learned peace," Zexthor said hopefully. "No," Santos corrected. "We learned unity. There's a difference. We stopped fighting each other because we realized we could do so much more together. But we never forgot how to fight, Ambassador. We just focused." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the holographic display. He zoomed in on Earth. "Ambassador Zexthor, we appreciate your concern. We truly do. Your offer comes from kindness, and we won't forget that." He looked directly at the alien. "But we must decline. We won't be evacuating Earth." "But the swarm," Zexthor protested. "We'll learn something new," Chen finished. "You said no species has ever stopped the Catharn. That's about to change. You are making a mistake." Zexthor's feathers turned bright red with stress. "You are condemning billions to death." Secretary General Santos placed a gentle hand on the ambassador's shoulder. "Ambassador, you've made a fundamental error. You assumed we needed protection. You assumed the Catharn were the predators and we were the prey." She smiled, but there was something in that smile that made Zexthor step back. "The Catharn aren't coming to hunt us, Ambassador. They're about to learn what it means to be hunted. By the only species in the galaxy that never stopped being predators, even after we reached the stars." Admiral Chen deactivated the hologram. "We have one request, Ambassador. When the Catharn arrive, keep your ships back. Stay out of our way. We wouldn't want you caught in the crossfire." "This is insanity," Zexthor whispered. "No," Santos replied. "This is humanity. You offered to shield Earth from the swarm, and we're grateful. But Ambassador," her expression hardened, "you underestimated who would come for us. Nobody. Because anything that tries learns why we're still here after 10,000 years of trying to destroy ourselves." The meeting ended. Zexthor left Earth that day, convinced he had witnessed mass delusion. He filed his report with the Galactic Council, recommending forced evacuation. The Council denied his request. If humans wished to die on their homeworld, that was their right. Zexthor requested permission to remain in the solar system. He would witness the end and perhaps save a few survivors. Permission was granted. 6 months until the Catharn arrived. 6 months until Zexthor learned the truth about humanity. 6 months passed like a countdown to doom. At least that was how Ambassador Zexthor saw it. The galactic fleet positioned itself 2 million kilometers from Earth, far enough to observe but close enough to attempt rescue when the inevitable happened. 12 battle cruisers hummed with power. Their crews watched their sensors with growing dread. Zexthor stood on the bridge of the flagship, the luminous dawn. Around him, officers from 6 different species monitored their stations. All of them had seen recordings of Catharn attacks. All of them knew what was coming. "Any change in Earth's defense status?" Captain Vril asked. She was a reptilian species, cold-blooded and logical. "No change," the sensor officer reported. "Minimal orbital activity. Their fleet count remains at 37 vessels." Vril's scales darkened with concern. 37 ships against billions of Catharn bioships. "This will be a massacre." Zexthor said nothing. He had tried 12 more times to convince Earth's leaders to evacuate. Each time they politely refused. Each time they smiled that strange human smile that showed teeth. "Ambassador," Vril continued, "my government has authorized me to begin rescue operations the moment the attack starts. We will save who we can." "Thank you, Captain." Zexthor appreciated the gesture even though he knew it would be useless. When the Catharn came, there would be no time for rescue. The days crawled by. Then on the 6th month and first day, the sensors screamed. "They're here," the sensor officer shouted. The view screen changed. Space itself seemed to writhe. Then they appeared. Not dozens, not hundreds, billions. The Catharn swarm emerged from faster-than-light travel like a plague of locusts. Their bioships were each the size of a small building. Grown from twisted organic matter, they pulsed with sickly green light. The swarm stretched across space so vast that it blocked out the stars. "By the ancestors," Captain Vril whispered. "I've never seen this many." They sent everything, Zexthor realized with horror. Earth must have resources they desperately want. The swarm moved as one organism. They bypassed Mars without slowing. The human colony there had been evacuated weeks ago, despite human government protests. The Galactic Council had insisted. "They're broadcasting," the communications officer announced. A sound filled the bridge. It wasn't language. It was something deeper, something that touched the primitive parts of the brain. A sound that said, "Give up, surrender, die." Then came the translation, "Surrender your biomass. Resistance is irrelevant. Your world will feed the swarm." Zexthor waited for panic from Earth. He waited for desperate calls for help, for last-minute evacuation requests. Instead, Earth's response was audio only, a single human voice speaking in English with the translator converting it for the swarm. But first, before the words, came something unexpected. Laughter. Human laughter, but not just one voice. Thousands of voices broadcast from Earth laughing at the swarm, then the words, "You have no idea what you've walked into." The swarm didn't respond. They never did. They simply continued forward, passing Earth's moon. "Why aren't the humans evacuating?" Vril asked. "They still have time to—" She stopped. Her mouth hung open. The moon was changing, its surface lit up with thousands of points of light. No, not lights. Targeting systems. What? Zexthor stepped closer to the view screen. The entire lunar surface was transforming. Gray dust fell away in sheets, revealing metal underneath. Weapons. Thousands upon thousands of weapons installations. They built weapons into their moon? Vril's voice cracked. Rail guns emerged from camouflage bunkers. Missile silos opened like metal flowers. Energy weapons charged with a hum that registered on sensors from 2 million kilometers away. Firing solutions locked. A human voice broadcast on an open channel. "All batteries ready. Fire," another voice commanded, calm, almost bored. The moon roared to life. Thousands of railgun rounds launched simultaneously. Each projectile moved at a fraction of light speed. They crossed the distance to the Catharn vanguard in seconds. The effect was devastating. The front ranks of the swarm simply ceased to exist. Bioships exploded in bursts of green ichor and shattered chitin. The railgun rounds passed through multiple targets before their energy dissipated. "Impact," the human voice reported. "Enemy casualties, 17,000 ships. Time, 40 seconds. Zexthor couldn't process what he was hearing. 17,000 ships destroyed in less than a minute? The swarm adapted. They scattered, breaking formation. They tried to envelope the moon, coming from multiple angles. The lunar weapons adjusted. Every installation could rotate 360 degrees. There was no safe approach. Another volley. Then another. The space between Earth and the moon filled with wreckage and debris. "How?" Captain Vril whispered. "How did they do this?" "Sir," the sensor officer called out. "I'm detecting energy signatures from Earth's surface. Massive power generation, far beyond what their civilization should produce." Zexthor zoomed in on Earth. What he saw made his feathers stand rigid with shock. The oceans, the vast blue oceans that covered 70% of Earth's surface. They were draining. "Where is the water going?" he demanded. "Underground," the sensor officer replied, his voice shaking. There are massive facilities beneath the crust. The oceans are coolant systems. They're cooling weapons." "The entire planet?" Vril asked. "They weaponized their entire planet?" Antarctica was splitting open. The ice shelf cracked and fell away, revealing something underneath. Launch bays. Thousands of them. Human warships emerged like sharks rising from the deep. Cities across Earth were changing. Buildings retracted into the ground. In their place, massive cannons rose toward the sky. What had looked like metropolitan areas were camouflage for planetary defense installations. They turned their home into a fortress. Zexthor said quietly. "Their whole world is a weapon." A new voice broadcast from Earth. "Admiral James Chen. Ambassador Zexthor, I hope you're watching." That was just the doorbell. The Catharn swarm, having lost millions of ships to the moon alone, changed tactics. They dove toward Earth itself, attempting to overwhelm through sheer numbers. Earth's atmosphere lit up. Defense satellites that had appeared to be communication relays revealed themselves as weapon platforms. They created a network of overlapping fire that nothing could pass through safely. The Catharn kept coming. They were designed to overwhelm defenses through numbers. They had conquered 47 civilizations this way, but those civilizations had been peaceful species. Species that fought defensively. Species that tried to protect humanity wasn't protecting. They were exterminating. Catharn casualties now exceeding 40 million, the sensor officer reported. His voice was numb. "Human casualties. Sir, I'm showing 12 damaged ships. No ships destroyed. Personnel losses are 0.003%. That's impossible, Vril said. Check it again, Zexthor ordered. The officer checked, then checked again. Confirmed, sir. 12 damaged ships quickly withdrawing for repairs. Human casualties number 473 wounded, 18 dead, against 40 million Catharn destroyed. On the view screen, human warships moved through the swarm like wolves through sheep. They didn't just shoot. They maneuvered with impossible precision, firing at maximum range, never letting the Catharn get close. One human destroyer faced down 1,000 Catharn bioships. It should have been slaughtered. Instead, it danced. Its engines flared, moving it out of the way of enemy weapons by centimeters. Its guns fired continuously, each shot destroying or crippling a target. Within 3 minutes, all 1,000 Catharn ships were debris. The human destroyer had taken only minor hull damage. They're not fighting, Zexthor realized. They're hunting. Captain Vril turned to him, her scales pale with shock. What have we done? We offered to protect them, Zexthor replied quietly. We offered to protect apex predators who were just waiting for something to hunt them. The battle continued for another 2 hours. The Catharn tried every tactic they knew. They tried suicide rushes. They tried surrounding maneuvers. They tried targeting civilian areas. Nothing worked. Every approach was calculated and countered. Every tactic met with overwhelming force. The Catharn weren't fighting an army. They were fighting a species that had spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare against themselves. Finally, impossibly, the Catharn did something they had never done in recorded history. They retreated. The swarm broke off, jumping to faster-than-light travel. But they had lost 30% of their numbers. 300 million bioships gone. The galactic fleet sat in stunned silence. Did humanity just win? Vril asked. Admiral Chen's voice broadcast again. Ambassador, you asked who would come for us. I think you have your answer now. Nothing comes for humanity. We are who comes for them. The Catharn swarm regrouped at the edge of the solar system. They had retreated, but they had not surrendered. Ambassador Zexthor watched the sensors with growing dread. The swarm was adapting, learning from their first encounter. They're changing formation, Captain Vril observed. Multiple attack vectors, staggered timing. They're trying to overwhelm Earth's defenses through complexity. Zexthor accessed the galactic database and searched for files marked Humanity, Restricted Access. He had clearance now. The Council had granted it after the first battle, realizing they needed to understand what they were dealing with. What he found made his blood run cold. The files weren't restricted because they were secret. They were restricted because they were terrifying. Humanity's history unfolded before him. 10,000 years of unending warfare. Not periodic conflicts like most species experience, but constant, continuous combat. Humans had fought over food, water, land, religion, resources, ideas, and sometimes for no reason at all except that they could. They had invented weapons designed specifically to cause maximum suffering. They had created strategies built on deception and misdirection. They had written entire books on how to break an enemy's will to fight. One passage caught his attention. Throughout their history, humans have been both predator and prey. They remember what it means to be hunted. This makes them uniquely dangerous. They fight with the cunning of prey and the ruthlessness of predators. Another file detailed humanity's space colonization. Every human colony was fortified. Every civilian transport carried weapons that would be classified as war crimes under galactic law. Every research station was positioned for strategic value. Captain, Zexthor said slowly, when humans joined the galactic community 50 years ago, what did they say their purpose was? Vril checked the records. They said they wanted to explore, to learn, to make friends among the stars. And we believed them? Why wouldn't we? Every species says the same thing. Zexthor gestured at his screen. Because for humans, making friends means identifying potential threats. For them, exploration means reconnaissance. They've been studying us, Captain. Studying our weaknesses, all while we thought they were harmless primitives. An alarm blared. The Catharn were attacking again. This time they came in waves, millions of ships at different speeds and angles. They had learned from their mistakes. The first wave was expendable, meant to drain Earth's ammunition. The second wave carried acid weapons to corrode the moon's defenses. The third wave was their real attack force. It should have worked. It was brilliant tactics, but the Catharn had made one mistake. They assumed Earth had shown them everything. The first wave hit the lunar defenses. Railguns fired, but fewer this time. The moon was conserving ammunition exactly as the Catharn predicted. The second wave launched their acid payloads. The projectiles arced toward the moon's surface, ready to melt the weapons installations. Then Earth's oceans finished draining. What the water revealed wasn't the ocean floor. It was metal. The entire ocean basin was armored plating, and built into that plating were energy weapons. Thousands of them. Planetary defense grid online, a calm human voice announced. All surface cannons charged. The ocean bed weapons fired. Pure energy beams lanced into space, each one powerful enough to crack a battleship in half. The Catharn's acid weapons vaporized before they could reach the moon. The second wave died in seconds. The third wave pressed on. They had numbers. They still had billions of ships. Antarctica opened wider. More launch bays revealed themselves and more ships emerged. But these weren't normal warships. They were larger, sleeker, covered in black armor that seemed to absorb light. What are those? Vril asked. Zexthor checked his sensors. I don't know. They're not in any database. They don't match any known human design. One of the black ships broadcast on an open channel. Dreadnought-class vessels engaging. All fighters clear the combat zone. Dreadnoughts. Humanity had built dreadnoughts. Ships so powerful that most civilizations banned their construction. The dreadnoughts moved into formation, their weapons charged with a sound that made space itself vibrate. When they fired, entire sections of the Catharn swarm simply disappeared. Not exploded, disappeared. The weapons destroyed matter at an atomic level. How long? Zexthor asked quietly. How long have they been building this? Sir, the sensor officer spoke up. I've analyzed Earth's power consumption records from our database. For the past 150 years, Earth has been consuming 3 times more power than their visible civilization requires. 150 years, Vril repeated. They've been preparing for this since before they joined the galactic community. No, Zexthor corrected, understanding dawning. They've been preparing since the moment they reached space. They looked at the stars and saw not friends but potential enemies. They prepared for war before they even knew we existed. Another wave of Catharn fell. Then another. The human forces weren't just defending anymore. They were advancing, pushing out from Earth in organized formations. A human cruiser isolated a cluster of Catharn bioships. Instead of destroying them immediately, it maneuvered around them, scanning. Studying them. They're learning, Zexthor realized. Mid-battle, they're analyzing Catharn biology and tactics. They're not just fighting. They're gathering intelligence. 10 minutes later, human weapons started adapting. Targeting systems focused on specific weak points in Catharn armor. Ammunition changed composition to exploit biological vulnerabilities. The kill rate increased. Casualties, Vril requested. Catharn losses now at 400 million ships, the sensor officer reported. Human casualties. 37 ships damaged, 2 ships destroyed, 547 personnel dead. 500 deaths out of millions of combatants. It wasn't a battle. It was an extermination. The Catharn retreated again, but this time the humans didn't let them go. All ships pursued course. Admiral Chen's voice commanded. We're not finished. Human vessels poured out of Earth's atmosphere and from hidden bases across the solar system. Thousands of ships. Tens of thousands. How many had they built? The galactic fleet watched as humanity's military might fully revealed itself. Every asteroid in the belt had been hollowed out and turned into a weapons platform. The moons of Jupiter weren't moons at all, but disguised battle stations. Saturn's rings contained millions of autonomous defense drones. The entire solar system was a trap. They didn't militarize a planet. Vril whispered. They militarized a star system. Zexthor thought back to the first meeting 6 months ago. Humans laughing at the offer of protection. Now he understood. They weren't crazy. They were insulted. Humanity had spent 200 years in space preparing for this exact scenario. They had turned every rock, every planet, every moon into part of a defensive network so vast and so deadly that calling it impressive was an understatement. They had built a fortress around their sun. Captain, Zexthor said, send a message to the Galactic Council. Tell them we need to reconsider humanity's civilization level. What should I classify them as? Frill asked. Zexthor watched another formation of human ships sweep through the fleeing Catharn like a scythe through grain. Apex predator, he replied. Classify them as an apex predator species, and recommend that every civilization in the galaxy be made aware. Sir, that classification doesn't exist. It does now. On the view screen, the human fleet pursued the Catharn across space. For the first time in recorded history, the swarm wasn't hunting. They were being hunted, and humanity, Zexthor realized with a chill, was very good at hunting. A final message came from Admiral Chen, broadcast to the Galactic Fleet. Ambassador Zexthor, thank you for your concern. Thank you for offering to protect Earth. We won't forget your kindness. There was a pause. But Ambassador, we haven't survived for 200,000 years by waiting for someone else to save us. We survived by being the thing others need saving from. The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel, chasing the Catharn into deep space. Zexthor looked at the empty space where Earth's defenders had been moments before. What have we awakened? He asked quietly. Captain Vril had no answer. No one did. But across the galaxy, species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive newcomers began receiving the same sensor data. They saw the same battle recordings. They read the same reports, and they began to fear. Not fear of the Catharn swarm which had terrorized the galaxy for centuries. Fear of the species that had made the Catharn flee in terror. Fear of humanity. The Catharn swarm fled through 3 star systems, and the human fleet followed like a shadow. Ambassador Zexthor's ship, along with the Galactic Observation Fleet, trailed behind at a safe distance. They were no longer there to rescue humanity. They were there to witness what happened when the galaxy's most feared predator met something worse. The humans are toying with them, Captain Vril said, her voice filled with disbelief. They could overtake the swarm, but they're maintaining pursuit distance. Zexthor watched his tactical display. She was right. Human ships were faster than Catharn bioships. They could have caught up and finished this. Instead, they followed, always just close enough to keep the swarm running. They're not toying, Zexthor realized. They're herding. In the Draxus system, the Catharn swarm attempted to hide behind a planet. It was inhabited by the Quellan species, a peaceful civilization of about 50 million. The planet had no defenses. Zexthor's feathers flattened in horror. The Catharn are using them as shields. They think humans won't fire if it risks civilian casualties. Should we warn the Quellans? Frill asked. Transmit on all... Zexthor began. Wait, the communications officer interrupted. I'm receiving a transmission from the human fleet. They're broadcasting to the planet, the message played. A human woman's voice, speaking through translators. Quellan people, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth Defense Force. The Catharn swarm is approaching your planet. You have 6 hours. We are transmitting coordinates for safe evacuation zones in your system. Gather your people and go there now. Do not ask questions. Do not hesitate. 6 hours. The Quellans responded immediately, their government demanding to know what was happening. You're being used as hostages, Chen replied bluntly. The Catharn think we won't attack them if you're in the way. They're wrong. But we'd prefer not to prove it. So evacuate now. But we need days to evacuate a planet, the Quellan leader protested. You have 6 hours, Chen repeated. Her tone was not unkind, but it was absolute. We can't give you more time than that. The Catharn will try to prevent your evacuation if we wait. Move now, and most of your people will live. Hesitate, and none of them will. The transmission ended. They're going to attack a populated planet? Vril asked, horrified. No, Zexthor said, watching his sensors. Look, they're sending ships. Transport vessels. Dozens of human ships broke formation and headed for the Quellan planet. Not warships, transports. They began landing in major cities. This is crazy, the sensor officer said. They're in the middle of a military operation and they're stopping to evacuate civilians. But that was exactly what they were doing. Human efficiency was terrifying to watch. They landed, loaded people with military precision, and lifted off in under 20 minutes per transport. They prioritized children and elderly. They organized evacuation points with the same tactical planning they used for battle. In 5 hours and 47 minutes, they evacuated 43 million Quellans to the designated safe zones. Then the human fleet opened fire on the Catharn positions. The Catharn had thought they were safe behind the planet. They learned otherwise. Human weapons curved around gravitational fields. Missiles that could plot courses through planetary atmospheres. Energy weapons that bent through space itself. The Catharn lost 200 million more ships. They fled again. This pattern repeated across 3 more systems. Each time the Catharn tried to use populated worlds as shields, the humans evacuated the civilians first, then destroyed the Catharn forces. Word spread across the galaxy. Humanity wasn't just powerful. They were principled. They wouldn't kill innocents even when it would be easier. This terrified the Galactic Council more than the weapons did. They have rules, Zexthor said to Vril. Even in war, they have rules they won't break. Why is that frightening? Vril asked. Because it means they've thought about this. They've considered the ethics of warfare so deeply that they have unbreakable laws. Captain, they've been preparing for war so long that they've developed philosophy about it. A new transmission came from Commander Chen. This time, it was broadcast on all frequencies, meant for the entire galaxy to hear. This is Commander Sarah Chen of the human species, addressing the galactic community. Some of you asked who would come for us when the Catharn attacked. Let me clarify the situation. Her image appeared on their screens. She stood on the bridge of her ship, Earth visible in a window behind her. She looked tired but determined. We are not victims. We have never been victims. For 200,000 years, humanity has survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and our own worst instincts. We survived because we learned to fight, not just physically but intelligently. We studied our enemies. We adapted. We overcame. She paused, letting that sink in. Every species in this galaxy evolved in one of 2 ways. You were predators, and you learned to cooperate, or you were prey and you learned to hide. Humans are unique. We evolved as both. We were prey for saber-toothed cats. We became predators that hunted mammoths. We learned to think like both the hunter and the hunted. Behind her, through the window, human ships maneuvered in perfect formation. This makes us adaptable in ways you cannot imagine. We know what it means to be afraid. We remember being prey, but we also know how to hunt. We remember being predators, and we can switch between these 2 modes without thought, without hesitation. The Catharn swarm has terrorized this galaxy for centuries. You ran from them. You hid from them. You died by the billions, and you accepted it because you couldn't imagine any other way. Her expression hardened. Humans don't accept inevitability. We don't surrender to fate. When something threatens us, we don't ask, how do we survive? But we ask, how do we win? These are not the same question. You asked who would come for us. The answer is no one. Because anything that comes for humanity learns the same lesson the Catharn are learning now. We are not prey. We are not victims. We are the species that looked at the stars and said, mine. We are the species that invented nuclear weapons and then didn't use them because we decided it would be wrong. We are the species that spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare, then another 200 years preparing for enemies we hadn't even met yet. She leaned forward, and her next words sent chills through every being watching. The Catharn thought they were apex predators. They were wrong. There's always a bigger predator, and in this galaxy that predator is us. We are humanity, and we have hunted things far more dangerous than the swarm. The transmission ended. What did she mean by that last part? Vril asked quietly. What have they hunted that was worse than the Catharn? Zexthor pulled up human history files again. He scrolled through wars, conflicts, battles. Then he found it. Themselves, he whispered. For 10,000 years, humans hunted each other. They fought enemies who thought exactly like they did, who were just as intelligent, just as adaptable. They didn't hunt mindless swarms or simple predators. They hunted mirrors of themselves. Vril's scales turned pale. And they survived. Not just survived. They got better at it. Every war taught them new tactics. Every battle made them stronger. They've been training against the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy, themselves. The Catharn swarm stopped running. They couldn't outrun humanity, and using civilians as shields only delayed the inevitable. The swarm gathered every remaining ship from across their territory. They consolidated at the Draxus Nebula, a region of space where sensors didn't work well. It was their last stand. Billions of bioships filled the nebula, every Catharn vessel that could still fly. It was the largest military force they had ever assembled. The human fleet arrived at the nebula's edge and stopped. For 12 hours, Nothing happened. The Catharn waited in the gas clouds. The humans waited outside. Why aren't they attacking? Frill asked. Zexthor checked his sensors. Then he understood, and it made him sick. They're letting the Catharn fortify, building defenses, positioning for ambush. The humans are giving them time to prepare. Why would they do that? Because, Zexthor said quietly, they want the Catharn to have every possible advantage. They want to fight them at full strength. They want there to be no doubt, no excuse, no question. That's insane. No, Zexthor replied. That's humanity making a statement. Not just to the Catharn, to the entire galaxy. They're saying, even at your best, you cannot stop us. Admiral Chen's voice broadcast one final message to the Catharn swarm. You have 6 days to prepare. Use them well. On the 7th day, we're coming in, and this ends. The galaxy watched and waited. The final battle would decide the fate of the Catharn swarm, but everyone already knew how it would end. The 7th day arrived like a storm on the horizon. Ambassador Zexthor stood on the bridge of the luminous dawn, watching the human fleet prepare for the final assault. The galactic observation vessels maintained their distance, safe but close enough to record everything. They're moving, Captain Vril announced. The human fleet advanced toward the Draxus Nebula in perfect formation. Thousands of ships, from small fighters to massive dreadnoughts, moved as one organism. Their coordination was beautiful and terrifying. Inside the nebula, the Catharn waited with billions of bioships. They had spent 6 days building organic defense networks, positioning ambush clusters, creating biological mines that would detonate when ships passed. The nebula's gases would hide them until the last moment. It should have been the perfect trap. The human fleet entered the nebula without hesitation. For the first hour, nothing happened. The gas clouds made sensors useless. Both forces were blind. Then the nebula exploded, not with weapons fire, but with something else. Light. Pure white light that cut through the gas and illuminated everything. What are they doing? Frill asked. Illumination flares, Zexthor said, reading his sensors. They're lighting up the entire nebula. The Catharn can't hide now. The Catharn's ambush strategy collapsed. Exposed by the light, they had no choice but to attack directly. The battle that followed lasted 6 days. 6 days of continuous combat. The Catharn threw everything they had at the humans. Suicide attacks, biological weapons, swarm tactics that should have overwhelmed any defense. Human ships moved through the chaos like dancers. They never stopped moving, never stayed still long enough for the Catharn to land a killing blow. Their weapons fired with precision that seemed impossible in the confusion of battle. On the 3rd day, the Catharn tried a desperate tactic. They released a biological plague designed to kill through radiation and ship life support. It could wipe out crew populations in minutes. The humans adapted within hours. They sealed their ships, deployed countermeasures, and kept fighting. Some ships were lost, their crews dying as they held the line so others could adjust. Zexthor watched 3 human destroyers sacrifice themselves to save a damaged carrier. They positioned themselves as shields, taking fire meant for the larger ship. Their crews broadcast their final messages. Tell our families we held the line. It was an honor serving with you all. Humanity endures. Then they were gone. But the carrier survived, repaired its damage, and returned to battle 3 hours later. They mourn, Vril observed quietly, but mourning doesn't stop them from fighting. They've been doing this for 10,000 years, Zexthor replied. They've learned to grieve and fight simultaneously. On the 5th day, the Catharn numbers had fallen to 1 billion ships. They were desperate now, throwing bioships at the humans in waves of millions. Human casualties had mounted. 2,800 ships destroyed, 47,000 personnel dead. By galactic standards, these were light casualties. By human standards, it was catastrophic. But they didn't stop. They didn't retreat. They pushed forward, ship by ship, meter by meter. On the 6th day, the Catharn swarm broke. Not because they ran out of ships, though they had lost 90% of their forces. They broke because, for the first time in their species' history, they felt something they had never experienced. Hopelessness. No matter what they did, no matter how they adapted, the humans countered it. It was like fighting a mirror that predicted your every move. The Catharn had evolved to consume civilizations through overwhelming numbers. But humanity had evolved to fight enemies just as smart as they were. The Catharn weren't fighting a civilization. They were fighting the accumulated military knowledge of 10,000 years of human warfare. The remaining Catharn ships stopped fighting. They simply drifted in space, their biological systems shutting down in surrender. The human fleet held fire. "This is Admiral Chen," her voice broadcast across all frequencies. "Catharn swarm, you have surrendered. By the laws of warfare that humanity has established, we accept your surrender." Silence from the Catharn. They had no concept of surrender. They had never needed it before. "You will be escorted to your homeworld," Chen continued. "You will be disarmed. You will establish a demilitarized zone around your space. You will not leave that zone for 100 years. These are the terms." Finally, a response came from the swarm. Not words, but a biological signal that translated to, "Why not destroy us?" "Because we're not monsters," Chen replied. "We're soldiers. There's a difference. You fought, you lost. That's the end of it. Now you live with the consequences." The Catharn were silent for a long moment. "Then what happens after 100 years? After 100 years, you may petition the Galactic Council for reintegration. If you've learned to coexist peacefully, you'll be welcome in the galaxy. If not, we'll have this conversation again." Another signal. "You would give us another chance?" "Everyone deserves a chance to change," Chen said. "Humans know that better than anyone. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times before we learned to cooperate. We're giving you the same opportunity we gave ourselves." The battle was over. The human fleet began the long process of escorting the Catharn survivors home. They provided food, medical supplies, and basic resources. The same species that had just destroyed 98% of the Catharn military was now helping the survivors. "I don't understand them," Vril said, watching the humanitarian effort begin. "They contain multitudes," Zexthor replied. "They can be the most brutal warriors and the most compassionate caregivers. Both exist in the same species, often in the same individual. That's what makes them so dangerous and so valuable." 2 weeks later, Ambassador Zexthor was summoned to Earth for a meeting with Admiral Chen. He went alone, leaving his ship in orbit. Chen met him in the same conference room where they had first talked, 7 months ago. The room that had echoed with human laughter when he'd offered to protect them. "Ambassador," Chen greeted him warmly. "Thank you for coming. Thank you for seeing me, Admiral." Zexthor sat carefully. "I came to apologize." "For what?" "For underestimating you. For assuming you needed protection. For thinking humans were helpless primitives who didn't understand the dangers of the galaxy." He paused. "I was a fool." Chen smiled, but it was a kind smile this time. "You weren't a fool, Ambassador. You were kind. Your species has evolved past the need for constant warfare. You've built a society based on cooperation and mutual support. That's admirable. That's what most species should aspire to. But not humanity? We'll get there eventually," Chen said. "But we're not there yet. We've only been unified for 200 years. We've only been at peace with ourselves for 2 centuries. Before that, we spent 10,000 years learning every possible way to kill each other. That knowledge doesn't just disappear." "What happens now?" Zexthor asked. "Does humanity conquer the galaxy?" Chen laughed. "No, we have no interest in conquest. We're not empire builders, Ambassador. We're defenders, but we'll defend on our terms. Meaning? Meaning we protect those who can't protect themselves. Meaning we respond to threats with overwhelming force. Meaning anyone who attacks our friends learns what the Catharn learned. The Galactic Council wishes to offer humanity a position," Zexthor said carefully. "They want to make you the shield of the galaxy. The primary military force for protection and peacekeeping." Chen was quiet for a long moment. "That's a lot of responsibility. You've proven you can handle it. You've also proven you have principles. You evacuated civilians while hunting the Catharn. You showed mercy when you could have simply destroyed them. The galaxy needs that combination of strength and compassion." "We'll accept," Chen said finally, "on 3 conditions." "Name them." "First, we maintain autonomous command. We won't take orders that violate our ethical codes. Second, we choose which conflicts to engage in. We're not mercenaries. Third, any species that wants our protection must agree to peaceful cooperation with their neighbors. We won't protect aggressors." "The Council will agree to these terms," Zexthor said. He knew they would. They had no choice. Humanity was now the strongest military force in known space. "Ambassador," Chen continued, "there's something you should know. We didn't prepare for war because we wanted to fight. We prepared because we know what happens to the unprepared. We've been the unprepared. We've been the conquered. We've been the enslaved and the destroyed. Our own history taught us that strength is the only reliable protection. What should we have done differently? Zexthor asked. 7 months ago when I offered to evacuate Earth? Chen stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. The same city that had hidden planetary defense cannons beneath its streets. You should have asked us what we'd been doing for the last 200 years, she said. You should have wondered why a species that had only just reached space was so confident. You should have checked those restricted files before you assumed we needed protection. She turned back to him. We didn't reject your help because we were arrogant, Ambassador. We rejected it because we'd been preparing for exactly this scenario since the day we left our planet. Every human child learns about the dangers of space. Every human citizen knows that the galaxy isn't safe. We don't wait for monsters to find us. We prepare for them. We build weapons they can't imagine. We develop tactics they can't counter. And when they finally arrive, we make them regret it. The Catharn certainly regret it, Zexthor said. The Catharn got mercy, Chen corrected, because they're animals following instinct. They hunt because that's what they evolved to do. But if a species ever attacks Earth with malice, with choice, with intent to harm, she let the sentence hang. What then? Then they learn why humanity spent 10,000 years perfecting warfare against themselves. They learn why we're still here after countless attempts to destroy ourselves. They learn that humanity is not prey. We're not victims. We're not defenseless. She walked back to the table and extended her hand. Zexthor took it. We're the species that survives, Chen said. Against ice ages. Against plagues. Against ourselves. And now against anything the galaxy can throw at us. Not because we're lucky. Not because someone protects us. But because we refuse to die. We adapt, we overcome, we endure. Humanity endures, Zexthor repeated, remembering the final words of the destroyer cruise. Humanity endures, Chen confirmed. And now, Ambassador, so does everyone under our protection. That's our promise to the galaxy. Zexthor left Earth that day with a new understanding. Humanity had laughed at his offer of protection not from ignorance but from knowledge. They knew what they were. They knew what they had built. They knew what they could do. The galaxy had offered to shield Earth from the Catharn swarm, but the galaxy had underestimated who would come for humanity. The answer was no one, because anyone who tried would face the only species in the galaxy that had spent 200,000 years learning to survive, and the last 10,000 years learning to win. They had faced the Catharn, and the swarm had learned what it meant to be prey. The galaxy would not forget that lesson, and in the darkness between stars where dangers lurked and threats waited, they all knew one truth now. Humanity was watching. Humanity was ready, and humanity would come for anyone who threatened the peace. Not as conquerors, not as tyrants, as protectors, as shields, as the hunters who had learned compassion. The galaxy had a new guardian, and that guardian was humanity.